camera. Sound good?
Yeah.
Alrighty. What is going on, Bentry? I am here with Brandon and Kevin, and we have a brand new piece of content that we're filming. We're doing a series called Branching Out, which is an exclusive experience where we can come together as staff members and members of the body of Bentry and kind of talk about what's going on and how we kind of run things here.
Yeah,
So, and today we're going to talk
man.
about something that is pretty sweet. We just had our United conference about a week and a half ago.
That was dope.
And I think it was a massic success, right?
Absolutely.
Pretty good.
We think so.
Yeah,
I
we think so.
I
Yeah.
think it was fantastic.
Anyone else who doesn't
It was-
needs help.
Exactly. So basically what I want to do is I just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of your guys' experience with United, how you guys felt it went. Our theme this year was greater than. And I want to know what the process was of being able to come to that theme and kind of the process of when did you guys first start meeting and talking about this idea and that theme can impact students, especially in this kind of time that they're in
Absolutely.
right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. So we start planning United pretty much right after MSM fall retreat happens. So late October, early November, we sit down and we start planning, and it is a long process.
It is. Definitely.
But I mean, this year we sat down as a student team and really weren't sure what we were going to do theme wise, where we were going to go, and just had a lot of conversation around this idea of joy. Was this word that kept coming up, right? And it transformed from there. Brandon was really good at explaining it.
Yeah. We were looking at the idea of joy and thinking, hey, do we just want to make messages on joy, right? And the thing is, when you look at a lot of times people are like, hey, where's some scriptures about joy? And you can go to that scripture and you can say, well, I don't feel joyful. And we started sitting back and saying, hey, what is it that we need to talk about in which is our foundation from joy, right? A foundation to have joy, not just to say you need to have joy, but this is how we have joy. And we just started thinking about God. Like, that's where all of that comes from. The idea that what's robbing joy is our circumstances, our struggles, what we're experiencing, and not seeing that even in the midst of all of that, God is greater than. And we just looked at it and said, hey, you know what? That's what we need to communicate to our students, to our staff, to our leaders. Hey, God is greater than. And knowing that gives us hope. That is where our joy comes from. And that's how it happened, man.
I mean, it's always so random kind of finding that phrase and that word.
For sure.
And it was just a random text I sent to you at one point. Like, I heard a worship song that had the phrase greater than or something in it. And I was like, dude, what about greater than?
Yep.
And we both heard it. We went,
That's it.
let's kind of marinate on that. Like, that's good. And it kind of encapsulated the thoughts that we had, but in just a really poignant way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, that's good, dude.
Well, there's like so much joy in thinking that like doesn't matter what your circumstances are, it doesn't matter what's going on in life. We all have our problems, but being able to know that Jesus is greater than, I think it's
Absolutely.
such a relevant message to then have students be able to have this maybe newfound look on what joy looks like in their lives.
100%.
And I think that it was relevant like from 6th grade all the way to 12th grade, which was super cool to see.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, and especially in the current just season of life we're all in, but students are in with COVID, and then so much turmoil
Right.
in the world. Like, it's really easy to forget that God is greater than.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? It's really easy to think of the things of the world and go, these are the most important things. And that's what's stealing my joy and all this stuff. And to get just
Absolutely.
caught up in the worldly things. And so to remember God is greater than in everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the everyday Christian fight, right?
For sure.
I mean, waking up every morning to the truth and wanting to hold fast to and walk in that truth. God, you are greater than how I feel about myself, right? And if you're greater than how I feel about myself, how you feel about me is greater than what I'm telling myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of those different things, man.
Yeah, I love that. So, when do you guys start planning for United?
We talked about that before. I mean, it's really after we get back from the middle school retreat. So in October, man, we're thinking, hey, what's the theme? What are we trying to do? We have meetings with our team and we start laying down the skeletons, for United. And, as the months progress, you're adding more to that body, right? So you have your skeletal system, then you get your nerve system, then you get your, organs, your, all that stuff. But it starts in October.
Yeah, it's a long process. So when it finally happens, there is some relief of like, whoa, dude, that's been on our brain since October to a degree.
Yeah.
There's also a weird rhythm thing of We do start that in fall, but Christmas, New Year's, that whole season is a really weird break in between. So we start thinking about United. We get the big rocks in place back in the fall. But really, we come back in the new year and we hit the ground running. We have 6 weeks-ish. And so let's really start knocking all this out. Because every year we go, dude, let's get better at this.
Yeah.
And January, the first week in January, we go, oh man, we gotta go.
We coming back into this thing. Yeah,
it's always a little bit of just a sprint towards the end. It's crazy, man.
It's funny,
especially as like a staff member, knowing that Easter and Christmas are huge.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to have a little bit of stuff planned and go 30,000 feet and then narrow yourself down once Christmas is over and getting into the new year.
Yeah, man.
So it makes the New Year's experience different for you. Like you're watching that ball drop.
Yep.
And you're like, yeah,
what's
10,
the theme again?
9, 8. And then you're like, oh, dang, I got to work now. So yeah,
so
it's
true,
fun, bro.
So true.
That's awesome. So kind of moving into the weekend itself, obviously there were a lot of moments. It was really cool to get to interview some of the kids to hear what they were really excited about.
That was dope. That was
the
dope.
vast majority of them said worship, which I thought was really cool.
That's cool.
I think that's dope that we have a really solid worship team for middle school and high school. So that was really exciting to see that.
For real.
But did you guys have any specific moments with a student or group of students that was very profound and impactful to you guys? And if you did, would you mind sharing a little bit about it?
Yeah. We had some students who separated themselves from everybody else during the worship experience, and they were just standing back worshiping the Lord, right? And it was just amazing looking at them by themselves, and it was like, man, like you could just see there's just authentic worship transpiring and taking place, and it was like, wow, man, that was great.
Yeah,
that was great.
we love worship is always so good at United, and there's such a crowd that runs up to the front and is worshiping, and it's this just powerful experience. But there's also, we've talked about this a lot, there's a lot of emotions that are in that, and it sometimes can become an emotional crowd group think experience to some degree, you know what I mean? But then we catch glimpses of kids who step back, right? They go to the back rows. They're on their knees, just them and God. And it's like, those are the moments where we go, whoa.
Yeah.
Right? Like that kid, that student is sitting it's just in such a worshipful reverence. It's so cool, man. And so we love the hype up front stuff, but we also see those background moments where students are just deep in worship. And those two together makes that room so fun.
100%.
That we also did the experience with the cross. We talked about it on Sunday morning.
I was
a little
actually
bit.
about to ask a little bit about that.
That to me was one of those moments of students laying down things in their life that they sometimes make greater than Jesus. And for us to be able to go up there and we have that now to read and pray over, and just it gave us a little glimpse.
Yeah.
We already knew that students were in a hard season and they were facing so many hardships.
Yeah.
But it gave us really personal things that we could look at and go, man, someone in this room wrote this.
Absolutely.
Let's pray for that person.
Yeah.
Let's pray for that person's parents, right? That they can minister to their son or their daughter, right?
It's so powerful.
Cool.
Yeah.
To see what was written on that cross too, that was crazy.
Yeah.
We had a moment with the worship team where Caleb had said, hey, we're going into the last session tonight. Before you worship, you need to see what is on this cross. And some of that stuff on there, knowing that it's 14 to 18-year-olds that are writing these things.
Yeah, bro.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember back when I was in high school and thinking about kind of where I am now, 5 years removed from that, I think, man, a lot of these struggles, I don't think were even present where I was at.
Yeah.
I think that the culture amongst high schoolers has shifted so much because of COVID, because of just the influence of social media and information.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy to see that vulnerability come out from students.
Yeah.
Either in a way of just worshiping and being in the back and just having their hands up on their knees, and then being able to be authentic about, hey, this is what I'm really struggling with.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's powerful. When did you guys land on that idea of, hey, we're gonna do a cross with the mirror mosaic and everything?
Yeah, bro.
Like, how did that come to fruition?
That's
That's
a great question.
Yeah. So that was Steve, Steve Frizzell, who led the teaching that weekend. That was his idea from something he had previously done, but just as he was thinking through, we got to meet with him and talk about what the theme was and really what we would hope would come out in the messages. And as he processed that, I think it was in January, he might have brought to our attention, hey, I want to do this cross as an illustration, right? Which was crazy, bro, because I'm not gonna lie, it was for me very much reflective of walking in faith in Christ, because I still didn't understand how this was gonna illustrate anything, right?
Yeah.
How this was gonna work. And I mean, up until like the 11th hour, because we were putting this thing together, putting glass on
Yep.
it, making it look pretty, and I'm like, I don't get this.
Yep.
And then right before the Friday night session, it was explained to us, and I was like, oh, that's dope. That's dope, bro.
It ended up being so great.
Yeah.
It was an interesting process to get to, though, because Steve had an idea at the same time that we as a student team had an idea, and we said, we want students to be able to write on something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We want them to write on, we talked about like making a big greater than sign or something like that, something tangible students could write on and put something that they were struggling with as being greater than God, right?
Yeah.
And so Steve had this idea, we had this idea,
Yeah.
and we kind of merged it into one. And then what was super cool is we have so many talented people here at
Man.
Bentry, right? We sat down with a couple people.
Shout out to Big A.
We sat down with,
For real.
well, we sat down
Aaron
with Caleb,
Bensko and
Caleb at
Caleb.
first,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
said, hey, this is our thought. What are you thinking? And we had this like really terrible drawing where it was like a cross at the top and then like blank space at the bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was like we could put it on canvas and all these ideas. And we sat down with Aaron Bensko, and he was like, okay, there's something about that it feels disconnected.
Yep.
It
Yep.
should all be one where they're writing on the cross. We were like, oh, well, that's such a good
Fantastic.
idea.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he sketched it up for us, drew things up. We even talked about making it an art piece that will be hung in the treehouse, right, for our students to be able to reference, for us to be able to reference. And
Yeah.
so he drew up sketches for it. And then another person on our staff, Brad, like built it in 2 hours
Yeah.
with wood we already had.
It's insane.
And it was so beautiful, way better than anything I could
Oh
have
my
ever
gosh,
built.
bro. It was
you know?
the dopest thing because Big A, Aaron Bensko, said, hey, I don't have bandwidth to make this for you. Can y'all ask Brad, right? And we're looking at budget. We got to pay for this stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So they asked Brad, bring it up to Brad. Brad's like, yeah. And we're like, I remember calling Brad, and I said, Brad, just tell us how much the wood's going to be so we could, pay attention to our budget. So I think I called him that night. The next morning, I called Brad up, and I said, Brad, so you get any prices on the wood? He goes, oh, no, I had some in the back, and it's already done. You want to come see it?
Oh,
and
my
I'm like,
goodness.
what?
It was crazy,
That's
man.
fast, man.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, and then it was just Brandon and I. We got to, we pre-did some of it, so
Yes.
it wasn't all put on there during the night.
Yes.
You
Fair
know what I
enough.
mean?
That's fine.
But we got to smash some mirrors
Yeah,
and like
man.
get artistic and put mirrors on there and a mosaic, which was a cool experience
It was,
and also
It was time investment.
slightly terrifying
Yeah,
too.
bro.
So we're gonna
The glass
cut
and
ourselves with
everything.
glass, but man, it ended up. That whole piece of the weekend really was a cool little cornerstone.
Yeah,
of
man.
Really good illustration, really cool, tangible things students could do, and just another act of worship is what it became.
Yeah.
So it was awesome.
It's currently sitting up on the stage in the in the treehouse, and
Yeah.
it's something that again we can look back to. We can see, man, you're there. That tangible piece was pivotal.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
dude, we had our team lead team here on Monday. We have a meeting, and we all went up there and sat around the cross and read some stuff and just prayed for students.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So like it's really cool. We've utilized it in the weeks after United to continue to pray and to continue to reflect on what God did, and so it's cool, man.
Yeah,
That's
I honestly
fantastic.
think it's helping me be a better shepherd too.
Yeah.
Just in the sense of you always have a general context of what our students are wrestling with, but things like that allow students to have anonymity to them
Yeah.
sharing, right?
Yeah.
We want to be a place where you're transparent, but we also know we're telling ourselves so many things that will keep us from telling stuff that's going on. When we actually have something to say, hey, this is what's happening in the lives of our students, it helps us lead us into, hey, what are some things that we need to focus in on? What do we need to be telling our leaders?
Yeah.
You know, these different things. So it helps us just shepherd and come alongside and
That,
love our students
that
better,
knowledge
bro.
is huge.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Just being
100%.
able to know what students are feeling.
Yep.
Because
Yeah,
some
man.
stuff, it's like, you would have never thought that little Timmy's going through whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
And you
real.
might not know directly, you know, that it's his struggle, but just knowing that there are kids of, you know, take any age group from 6th grade to 12th grade that are dealing with any of these things on there.
Oh yeah,
It's crazy.
It really is. And so I think it is such a blessing how it sounds like this process came together of just like a mesh of ideas coming
yeah.
together and
Yeah,
just
bro.
it's really cool to
It was the church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seriously.
Working
it
like
was.
it wasn't just like student ministry. It was so many key players in the church here at Bentry that
Yeah,
just
man.
like contributed. It was really cool.
It
a
was.
cool-
It
cool
was.
project. So
yeah. And back to that whole like tangible experience too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that you can have like if that stays up in the treehouse for the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years, you can have students that come back as an adult or maybe even with their own kids and be like, I wrote on that.
Yeah.
You know, this was
Yeah, bro.
this
Yeah.
was my junior year United. I remember writing on this cross.
Absolutely.
And our
so
hope,
cool.
honestly, is that it becomes kind of this milestone moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where students go, I remember that moment. That's what I wrote on that cross. And from there,
Yep.
look at what God has done.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
That was the thing I struggled with. And God has been faithful
yeah.
to continually remind me He is greater than. So that's still a thing in my life, but it's not
For sure.
a struggle. You know, so that's the ideal scenario where a
Yeah.
student sees it and goes, man, remember a couple years ago where that was the thing, and now look what God has done.
Absolutely.
You know, so
I think there's the other part of it, man. I didn't think about just now until now, but the idea of I am not alone in the fact that I'm struggling. Right?
yeah.
I mean, we come here too often, man. We act like this is just a masquerade ball, and we put on masks and act like everything's all good. In fact, we hate that. We don't condone
Yeah.
that in any way. But as people continue to do that, they think they're the only one. When you look at that cross, you see, man, you are not alone in your need for God. You are not alone in the struggle or whatever you got going on in your life. And man, not only is God greater than, but He's left the bride behind to one, you know, show Christ to all and let everyone know that God is greater than, but also to love one another in our stuff, man.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
There's just a great opportunity there for them to see that.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
good.
All right, well, I think we should land the plane a little bit here.
Yeah.
Got a few more questions for you guys. The big one, well, there's really two big ones. How successful do you think this United was?
Man.
That's a great question, man.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask me personally, that goes down to what was your goal for it, right? And our goal was that students would enter into the truth that God was greater than, that the Lord would do something incredible there. And personally, I mean, he and I have talked about, our student team have talked about it. We've heard a lot of feedback on it. We think that happened, but not only that, that there was just something very different spiritually in an incredible way about this United, right? I've only had 2 experiences, but I've done youth ministry for a while. I've done like a lot of spring retreats or retreats, period. And there's maybe been one other time, but this wasn't even a retreat, that I felt just the power of God moving. You know, so I think it was wildly successful in that regard. Yeah.
Success in student ministry and really even in the church is hard to gauge a lot. It's super subjective, right? So like a lot of times in the church we look at numbers and we look at whatever, and United is one of those events where a certain number of people sign up and they come and we hit the goal of what we thought would show up for
We
this
did
year.
do that. Yep.
So that's good. And when we look at the weekend, are there things we would change? Are there ways we could make it better? Are there things we maybe wouldn't do? Of course. But overall, like it was a good weekend, man. And we heard from leaders, we heard from some longtime staff members that this was the best United they've had. But I think there was something cool about just the the place in life we're all into, our students were just ready for something like this again.
Yeah.
Right? Ready for intentional time in worship and in teaching and in small groups. They got so much time in small groups over a 48-hour span, almost more than they do in an entire year of normal MSMs or HSMs, right?
Yeah.
And so from that way, it's always successful. But looking at this one, like, it was a really good weekend.
Yeah.
Man. So are there things we change? Totally. But I think what happened, the way God moved, like, we wouldn't change that for anything.
Real quick, favorite part of United? Like, what moment was your favorite part of the weekend?
I think for me, everything culminates. There's two answers I'll give you. Everything culminates Saturday night, where it's just students have been primed, walls are coming down, and Saturday night worship. That last set, the response set, always is super powerful. We as a student team prioritize getting in there, and I actually like require it almost of us as a team of like, we need to get in there, because all of the hard work we've done, all the hours we put in, this is the culmination of it.
Yeah.
So there's something super cool about it. But along with that, Sunday morning in worship, when we are here in the service, there's this really cool thing of students leading the whole church in worship, right? Just the posture and the energy and the excitement rubs off on our entire congregation.
100%.
And it's a cool, like, there's something about it where it's like, man, finally our church can really see our students worship and like participate in it and be led by students. And so there's something neat. I hope it's encouraging for the church of like, we have a generation coming up who still loves Jesus. It's hard to see that sometimes in culture. And so that's just always a cool moment of United. And this year, both of those were no exception. Those were so powerful.
100%. Man, it's hard for me to answer because like 4 moments just popped in my head right off the bat, right? I love the Saturday night event we had with our high school.
Yeah.
Where we were upstairs in the treehouse and we had a Western, right? And
like a Western dance party.
Western dance party. And we had a DJ and it was just fun, man, watching the students just have fun. We were doing line dances. We were going crazy dancing. I dressed up as a cowboy. It was a great time. Amazing, bro. But you know what? Aside from seeing God come through in so many moments during United, because I've had some myself that he personally just impacted me with and just answering prayers, I think my favorite moment was seeing visitors that we gave free passes to attend. And man, the fruit of that, like right now, we got a kid named Nick who is now plugging into this church, right?
That's awesome.
He's coming to church in the morning and then coming to HSM, right? We had a student.
He dove in.
He just
man,
dove
from
in, man.
United.
In fact,
Yeah.
if you watch the video, the recap video, he's a black dude on stage just dancing around with a horse and a hat,
That's
man.
awesome.
Cool cat too, man. He's
First time he's ever been here, and he was comfortable doing that.
comfortable,
You know what I mean?
went in, man, and he loves Jesus. He loves Jesus. And then having old students, man, who have been disconnected and they've been going through some things, man. They, them coming back and actually one of them saying, "Hey, I'd like to be baptized," right? That's just like, heck yeah, bro. So
Yeah, it kind of goes with that question of success. How do you gauge success of United? There's been continual follow-up of things, right? There's some powerful things happening at HSM at night, huge conversations happening.
Yeah.
For middle school, our small group dynamics change,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Students just are way more open and trust their leaders more. And so there's this relational just capacity built up. Like,
Yeah.
so
yeah.
it's like those are the moments now that we're experiencing that make us go, man, United was hard and so crazy,
Yeah.
but so worth it. Because look at the fruit now.
Yeah, yeah, bro.
You know what I mean? So that kind of answers your last question too. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
bro.
So,
Can I just throw one more thing out there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I'm just, as I continue reflection, I think one of my favorite moments, because it's so pivotal for believers, not just students. We entered into a time in which I challenged them. I said, man, it's not about how you feel. but about what is true. And our feelings can be true, but they're not always the truth, right? So it was a moment during communion where I challenged that. And I'm not by any means trying to big up myself. That's not it. What I loved was later that evening, or actually the next day, leaders were coming back and telling me, we spent time in small group challenging that.
That's
Just
awesome.
hey man, your feelings don't determine that all the time. So that was a beauty for me, because I think that's something that we are definitely up against in terms of the generation that we are ministering to. How feelings are impacting, or the feelings are the things that are determining for them what is true and informing how they practice their faith.
Yeah.
But it's how it's been for so long, in the body of Christ and the bride of Christ. And I'll just speak from a Western church perspective, how our feelings have informed our practice of faith. So
Yeah. That's awesome. Man, thank you guys so much for
course, dude.
for doing this. This has
Yeah,
been
bro.
a really awesome first episode, and just figuring out this whole branching out and talking about what's going on.
Yeah,
Well,
bro. Absolutely.
Thanks, dude.
Thank you, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Yep.